My name is James Walker, but most people just call me Jim. I'm 53 years old, and I live alone in a cold, quiet corner of Helena, Montana. The winters here are long, and the silence even longer. I didn't always live like this. There was a time when I had a family, a purpose, a sense of direction, but that feels like another lifetime. I'm a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. 2 tours, 12 years apart. I was Army, infantry, the kind of job where you get used to not sleeping and forgetting what day it is. The kind where you learn to silence your fear because it can get your brothers killed. I came back with my body mostly intact, minus part of my hearing and 2 fingers on my left hand. But my mind, that stayed over there, buried in the sand somewhere outside Kandahar. After the war, nothing really made sense. Civilians don't realize how loud peace can be. The hum of refrigerators, the ticking of clocks, the meaningless chatter at grocery stores. It's all so loud, and yet no one's really saying anything. I couldn't relate to people anymore. The small talk, the fake smiles, the politics. God, the politics. Everyone yelling and no one listening. I tried to hold it together. Got a job as a mechanic. Good work, honest work. My hands knew what to do, even when my heart didn't. But the nightmares started eating away at my sleep. And the drinking? That came next. It's funny. I used to be the guy people came to in the unit when they needed strength. Now I couldn't even face a mirror without half a bottle of Jack in my system. My wife, Laura, she tried. God bless her, she tried. But she didn't marry the man who came home. She married the boy who left. I pushed her away before she had the chance to walk. Our daughter Emily was only 12 when we split. She's 26 now. Married, 1 kid, lives out in Oregon. We talk maybe twice a year. I don't blame her. I wasn't much of a father, not after everything. So now it's just me. A rusted-out Ford truck, a lazy old dog named Ranger who limps more than he runs, and a whole lot of silence. My days are a loop. Fix a few cars in town, smoke too much, drink just enough, and fall asleep on the couch with the TV still on. My hands still shake when it gets quiet enough to hear myself think. I've lost count of how many times I asked God if he was still out there, or if he ever was. When you've seen kids with their legs blown off and women using their own bodies to shield their children from gunfire, it's hard to believe in mercy. I didn't go to church. I didn't pray. Not anymore. I figured if God had something to say to me, he missed his chance years ago. But lately, something's been different. I can't explain it. There's been this ache in my chest. Not physical. Not like a heart attack or anything. Just this pull, like something's trying to get my attention. I wake up feeling like I forgot something important. Sometimes I'll see flashes when I close my eyes. A field, a bright light, the sound of rushing wind. It doesn't make sense, and I don't talk about it with anyone because who would believe me? A few days before it happened, I had this dream. I was standing on a battlefield, but everything was still, frozen. I looked around and everyone was looking at me. Not angry, not sad, just waiting. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing like I was under fire again. I didn't know it at the time, but that dream was a warning, or maybe a gift, because what came next would change everything I believed about life, death, and even politics. It's strange how the past doesn't knock. It just walks in, sits down, and makes itself at home. That week before everything changed, the ghosts were louder than usual. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie in bed with my hands behind my head, staring at the ceiling like it owed me answers. Every little sound, a creak in the floorboards, a gust of wind outside, sent my heart into high alert. Muscle memory. You can't untrain war. I'd see their faces. Guys from my unit. Some who made it back, most who didn't. Rodriguez, my bunkmate on the first tour, took a round to the neck just 2 feet from me. Jackson, the kid who could have been a pro baseball player, bled out on the medevac bird while I held his hand. They don't age in my memory. They're still 20-something, grinning in dust-covered uniforms, still joking about home, still waiting for mail. But it wasn't just the war that haunted me. It was the life I had built and broken. I missed my daughter more than I let myself admit. I'd check her Facebook sometimes, pictures of her smiling with her husband and little boy. I never comment. I don't want to intrude on her happiness with my shadow. But God, how I wish I could just call her and say, I'm proud of you. Maybe she doesn't need to hear it, but I need to say it. And Laura, I'd catch myself listening to the old voicemail she left me years ago on my birthday. Her voice still sounded like home, but I never called back. My life felt like a long hallway of closed doors, and I was too ashamed to knock. Around this time, I started asking bigger questions, the ones you shove down when you're too busy trying to survive. Why am I still here? What was the point of coming back if I was just going to rot from the inside out? Does any of it even matter? One night, I sat out on the porch with a flask in one hand and a cigarette in the other. The sky was so clear it almost looked fake. Stars scattered like broken glass across black velvet. I whispered something I hadn't said in years. God, if you're real, say something. Anything. Show me you haven't forgotten me. Nothing happened. No voice, no lightning, just silence, and a cold wind that blew my cigarette ash into my lap. I laughed bitterly, but inside, something cracked. It wasn't loud, more like the first fracture in a frozen lake. You don't see it, but you feel it. The next morning, I woke up with a weird kind of energy. I cleaned the kitchen for the first time in months, took Ranger for a walk longer than usual. I even called the VA to reschedule a therapy appointment I'd blown off for the third time. Something inside me had shifted, just a little, like maybe something was coming. But even then, I couldn't shake this low hum in my spirit, like a radio tuned to a station just out of reach. I could feel something, someone, watching me, but not in a threatening way. It was more like I was being waited on, not by death, but by truth. And whatever it was about to find me. It happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are the most forgettable days. Not close enough to the start of the week to feel new, and too far from the weekend to bring any relief. Just gray space. That's what that Tuesday felt like. Gray. I had a job that morning. A regular client, Miss Jenkins, an old widow in her 80s who still drove her '95 Buick like she was in NASCAR. She said it was making a whining sound. Turned out it was the power steering pump. Easy fix. I drove out to her place about 20 minutes outside town, winding back roads, all pine trees and sky. I remember how bright the sun was that day. It had just snowed a few days before, so the white fields were almost blinding. Ranger sat in the passenger seat, head out the window, tongue flapping in the wind. That dog was the only real company I'd had in years. The road was familiar. I'd driven it 100 times. But this time was different. There was black ice just past the bend. I didn't see it until it was too late. My truck hit it and spun. I lost control instantly. The sound was sickening. Tires screeching, metal groaning, Ranger barking in panic. I tried to steer out of it, but the back end fishtailed and slammed hard into a pine tree. Everything stopped. The windshield shattered. My head hit the steering wheel. There was this pop, like the world just snapped in half. And then, nothing. No sound. No pain. Just stillness. And then something I'll never forget. The moment I realized I was no longer in my body. It didn't feel like a dream. It didn't feel like a hallucination. It felt more real than anything I'd ever known. I was standing, or floating maybe, a few feet above the crash. I could see my truck crumpled against the tree. I could see myself slumped over the wheel, blood trickling from my forehead. My eyes were open, staring at nothing. Ranger was barking, pawing at my chest, whining in panic. But I wasn't afraid. In fact, I felt peace. Pure, powerful, overwhelming peace. Not the absence of chaos, but the presence of something greater, something sacred. I looked at myself and didn't feel panic. I felt release. The weight I'd carried for decades, the guilt, the pain, the loneliness, was gone. It was like I'd been holding my breath for years, and finally, I exhaled. The air around me shimmered, like heat rising off pavement. Then the light started to come. Not from the sky, not from any direction I could name. It just was. Bright, but not blinding. Warm, but not hot. It pulled me gently, like a tide, like I was being invited, not forced. And in that moment, I knew, without a doubt, that I was dead. But somehow, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like the beginning. I don't know how long I floated there, above the wreck, above myself, above it all. Time didn't move the way it does here. There were no seconds ticking by. It felt like everything was happening all at once, and yet nothing was rushed. Like eternity had paused to let me breathe. I could still see the truck, still hear Ranger whining faintly, But the scene began to fade, not disappear, just become less important, like the volume was being turned down. My attention was being pulled elsewhere, upward, forward, inward. It's hard to put into words, but the more I let go of what I thought I was, Jim Walker, veteran, mechanic, broken man, the more I remembered something deeper, something older than my name, older than this world, my soul. There was no fear, no judgment, only a presence, silent, patient, overwhelmingly full of love, and it was waiting, not like a person, more like a doorway that had been there all along. As I moved toward it, I passed through what I can only describe as a veil, not physical, not visible, but real. The moment I crossed it, the world behind me vanished, and I stepped into something holy. The colors were different there, richer, alive. Light didn't shine on things, it shone through them. Even the air felt intelligent, like it knew me, welcomed me, remembered me. I wasn't walking, I wasn't floating. I was being carried by something I couldn't see but fully trusted. And then came the silence, but not the silence of loneliness, the kind I knew all too well. This silence was sacred. It was a silence that spoke, that healed, that answered every question without a single word. I understood things instantly, not with my mind, with my spirit. I saw my life all at once. Every choice, every moment of weakness, every act of love I thought went unnoticed. It was all laid out, not as judgment, but as understanding. Like being embraced by the truth instead of punished by it. I felt the pain I'd caused others, not as punishment, but as empathy. I wept, not out of guilt, but from the weight of finally seeing clearly. It was like cleaning a fogged mirror and seeing your face for the first time in decades. I also felt every kindness I had ever done, every small act, every hug I gave to a scared soldier, every prayer I mumbled when no one was listening, every tear I wiped from my daughter's cheek when she was small. Nothing had been wasted, nothing had gone unseen. And in that moment I realized, we are not alone. We never have been. And then, I felt it. A presence behind me. No footsteps, no warning. Just a radiance that grew and wrapped itself around me like fire made of peace. I turned, and I saw him. I turned, and there he was, Jesus. Not as a painting, not as a story, not even as a man. He was more than light, more than presence. He was truth itself, standing before me. And yet, he looked at me like I was the only thing in the universe that mattered. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move, not out of fear, but because every cell in me was undone by love. I had spent years feeling forgotten, wasted, broken. But the moment his eyes met mine, I realized he had never looked away. His eyes, God help me, his eyes. They didn't just see me, they knew me. They saw every moment I cursed him in the dark, every time I drank myself to sleep, every time I pushed away my daughter, my ex-wife, my friends, every battlefield I stood on, every soul I saw leave their body, every scream I swallowed because soldiers aren't supposed to break. He saw it all, and he didn't flinch. There was no anger, no disappointment, no list of sins, only this deep, eternal sorrow, not at me, but for me, like he had been hurting with me the whole time, like he had wept every tear I refused to shed. He stepped toward me. I didn't move. I couldn't, but he didn't need words. I heard him, in my spirit. You were never alone, Jim, not in the desert, not in your grief, not in the silence of your kitchen. I was there, every moment, even when you hated me, even when you gave up. I was there. I fell to my knees, not because I was forced to, because I wanted to, because in front of that kind of love, what else can you do but surrender? I wept like a child, not because I was ashamed, but because I was home. And then he knelt with me. The Son of God knelt beside a broken soldier. He touched my face, not with hands, but with presence. I felt every wall inside me collapse. All my questions, all my bitterness, all my doubts, they vanished like smoke. And I knew then, Jesus is not a religion. He's a relationship. He wasn't interested in my theology. He didn't quiz me on Bible verses. He didn't care about the politics I clung to for identity. He only wanted me, the real me. And somehow, in all my mess, I was already enough. But then, his expression changed, not in anger, in urgency. His eyes became sharper, still full of love, but focused. He was about to show me something global, something that would shatter everything I thought I knew, especially about a man named Donald Trump. Jesus stood before me and I felt the air shift. The peace was still there, but now there was urgency, a divine intensity. It was like being in the calm before a great storm, not a storm of destruction, but of revelation. There are things you must see, he said, not with his mouth, but straight into my soul, because the world has been deceived, and you have a mission. Suddenly, everything around us dissolved. No more heavenly light, no more stillness. Instead, I was shown the earth, not just the land, but the systems, the structures, the spirits behind them. I saw cities buzzing with noise, governments weaving tangled webs, people chasing shadows in the name of truth. And then I saw America. A great weight hung over it, a spiritual fog. I saw confusion, manipulation, anger, and fear rising like smoke from every direction. Schools, media, churches, politics. People weren't seeing truth. They were being fed versions of it, carefully crafted illusions, and they believed it because the lie had been spoken so often, it felt familiar. Then I saw a man standing in the chaos, Donald Trump, but not the way I had seen him on TV, not through the lens of media, memes, or outrage. I saw his soul, and I was shocked, because what I saw was a man chosen, but misunderstood. No, he wasn't a savior. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't perfect. God made that clear. But he was an instrument, one being used for a purpose greater than himself, a purpose even he didn't fully understand. He was sent to disrupt, Jesus said, to shake foundations, to expose what was hidden, not because he is holy, but because he is willing. And suddenly I saw it. The war wasn't political. It wasn't left versus right. It wasn't conservative versus liberal. It was spiritual. There were principalities, forces beyond human vision, manipulating entire populations through media, division, fear, and confusion. And anyone who dared to break the illusion would be attacked, not just in politics, but in every sphere. The world judged by appearance, Jesus said, but I judge the heart. And he showed me that Trump's role was not about being liked or approved. It was about being used to trigger exposure, to force what was hidden into the light. He was a mirror, reflecting both the best and worst of a nation. He wasn't what people thought, and neither were the ones behind the curtain. People in powers who wear masks of virtue but serve agendas of control. I was shown names, faces, contracts, conversations. Not all politicians, some religious leaders, CEOs, media giants, people shaping narratives for power, not truth. And then came a warning. I felt it more than heard it. There is a time coming when truth will no longer be tolerated, where light will be called darkness, and darkness called light. But I will raise up voices, even the unlikely ones, especially the broken ones. That's when I understood. That's why I was shown this. Not because I was wise, not because I was righteous, but because I had lived in silence for too long, and now I had to speak. And then the vision faded, and I was back in that place of light. Jesus looked at me with that same love, but now it carried a weight. Now you know, he said, but knowledge without action is wasted. You must return. You must tell them. My heart sank. Return, back to pain, back to loneliness, back to a world that wouldn't believe a word of this. I didn't want to go, but I also knew I had to. Jesus didn't speak for a moment. He just looked into me, not at me, into me, as if preparing my soul for what was next. And then he raised his hand. Immediately, a new vision opened before us. Like a veil being ripped away from time itself, I saw the future, but not in a single line. It branched out like a tree. Some branches were thick and full of light. Others were twisted, dark, covered in thorns. Each one represented a path humanity might take. Some led to redemption, others to ruin. I saw America shaking like a house in an earthquake. Its foundations were being tested, political, economic, spiritual. I saw chaos in the streets, but it wasn't random. It was engineered, stirred, funded, controlled. I saw division sharpen into hatred, race against race, neighbor against neighbor. even church against church, families torn apart not by war, but by ideology. The enemy has no new weapons, Jesus said, only new disguises. And the greatest weapon he uses now is confusion. Then I saw something terrifying, a false unity rising like a golden statue. It looked beautiful, inclusive, kind, tolerant, but beneath its surface was a venom. It silenced truth in the name of peace. It demanded compliance disguised as love, and those who resisted were mocked, canceled, and eventually persecuted, not with swords, but with silence, with laws, with exile from society. And then I saw technology, not as a tool, but as a throne. I saw a world addicted to screens, unable to think, only react. Artificial intelligence was everywhere, helpful on the surface, but underneath, it was feeding something dark, watching, learning, replacing. And at the center of it all, I saw people's eyes, empty, glazed over, as if their souls had been numbed. But that's not all. I also saw hope, because in the middle of the shaking, in the middle of the confusion and fear, I saw pockets of light breaking through. Homes, churches, old warehouses, basements, coffee shops. Revivals were happening, not on stages, but in hearts. People were waking up, ordinary people, ex-addicts, single moms, veterans, teenagers, immigrants, farmers, truck drivers, CEOs, former atheists, broken people who had finally hit bottom and found God there. These weren't the celebrities of faith, they were the remnant, and they carried something real. I saw Donald Trump again, older now, hated by some, adored by others. But neither praise nor criticism was the point. What mattered was that his presence continued to reveal things. He wasn't perfect, but God was using him to slow down a machine that was racing toward destruction. Then I saw others rising, voices that would carry truth with love, not anger. Bold voices, peaceful warriors, truth-tellers who feared nothing because they feared God alone. Some were well known, most weren't, but they were connected, not by denomination or party, but by spirit. And in the center of it all, I saw Jesus, not standing apart, but standing in the fire with us, not saving us from the shaking, but through it, because the shaking wasn't punishment. It was mercy. It was the only way to wake us up before it was too late. And then Jesus looked at me again. They will mock you. They will say this is politics, but this is not about politics. This is about the war for truth. Speak, not to argue, but to awaken, not to win, but to warn. And just like that, the vision ended, and I knew it was time to return. When the vision faded, I was still standing with Jesus. Everything in me wanted to stay. How could I go back to a world that didn't understand? A world full of noise and hatred and endless misunderstanding. How could I go back to that body, to that pain? You must return, he said gently. I looked at him with everything in me screaming, no, not out of rebellion, but grief. The thought of being separated from his presence felt like being asked to breathe without lungs. The message is not for you to keep, he continued. It is for you to carry. Then he placed his hand over my heart, and in that touch, I felt every word, every vision, every truth he had just shown me, etched into my soul. I knew I wouldn't forget. I couldn't forget, not even if I tried. And then, without warning, I felt it. The fall. That's the only way I can describe it. Like a spirit crashing back into something far too small. The light receding, the warmth fading, the silence torn open by the sound of a beeping. I gasped violently as air filled my lungs, and pain slammed into my chest like a sledgehammer. My ribs, my head, my back. I was in the hospital. Tubes, wires, a neck brace, and voices shouting. I was back. I tried to speak, but my throat was raw. I couldn't move. I could barely see. A nurse leaned over me, shouting something about me being lucky to be alive. I didn't feel lucky. I felt crushed, not physically, spiritually. The weight of this world. It was like walking through mud after flying through the stars. I had seen the eternal, and now I was strapped to a bed, unable to move, surrounded by fluorescent lights and machines. It felt wrong, not because life is evil, but because now I knew what life was meant to be. Over the next few days, they told me the details. I'd been unconscious for over 12 minutes. My heart had stopped in the ambulance. No brain activity, no pulse. One EMT swore she heard me whisper something while I was technically dead, but no one believed her. They said it was a miracle I survived, that I should thank luck, but I knew better. This wasn't luck, it was mercy, but no one around me could understand what I had just experienced, not even the chaplain who came to pray with me. He quoted scripture politely, but he didn't see. He didn't know. I had been in the fire with Jesus. I had heard the truth about the world. I had seen the future. And now, I was back, not just to live, but to speak. And that terrified me more than the crash ever did, because I knew what was coming. I knew the world wasn't ready. Once I could walk again, I went home. Different house, same world. The silence was louder now, not because there was less noise, but because there was too much clarity. I had seen the truth, and now I had to live with it. For weeks I didn't say a word. Not to the neighbors who dropped off casseroles. Not to the guy at the gas station who asked if I'd heard about the next election. Not to the local pastor who kindly suggested I had dreamed it all. I just sat with it. I would go outside late at night, stare up at the sky and whisper, "Are you still with me?" The presence I had known with Jesus, it wasn't gone, but it wasn't the same. Here it came in whispers, not thunder, in nudges, not visions, in scripture, not fire. Still, he was with me, and eventually I began to speak. First to my daughter. I told her what happened, carefully, slowly, afraid of her reaction. She cried. She didn't say much at first, but the next day she called me again, and the next. It was like a wall had been torn down between us. I'll never forget her words. "Dad, I don't know if I believe everything, but I believe you." That was enough to keep me going, so I shared more. I spoke at a veterans group in town, told them not just about the accident, but about what I saw, about Jesus, about the vision, about Trump, about the war behind the war. A few guys stared at the floor. One stood up and walked out. Another one hugged me. And later I got emails from men who hadn't prayed in 30 years. Some said they cried for the first time since combat. Others accused me of being brainwashed or going religious. And that's when I learned, telling the truth will cost you. Friends stopped calling. People at church gave me forced smiles. A few accused me of spreading conspiracy theories. One man I respected, a Christian, told me Jesus would never care about someone like Trump. But I had seen the truth. I had looked into the eyes of Jesus, and I knew he cares about every soul, even the ones we don't understand, even the ones we judge, even the ones we hate. And he was asking me to speak, even if it meant losing everything else. So I kept going. I wrote down my story. I started posting it online. Some videos, some blogs, just raw, honest truth. And the reactions? They were fire and ice. Some called me a liar. Some called me a prophet. Some called me mentally unstable. Others whispered that they had seen something too. The line between crazy and called is razor thin. But I stopped caring what people thought, because one day I'll stand before him again, and I won't answer to likes or shares or applause. I'll answer to the one whose eyes knew every war I ever fought, and still called me worthy. So I keep speaking, even if I speak alone. If you've made it this far, I need you to hear me, not with your ears, but with your heart. Time is shorter than you think. This world, it's not what it looks like. We are standing on a fault line. Not just politically, not just culturally, but spiritually. And the ground is already starting to shake. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a prophet. I'm a man who died and met Jesus. And he showed me what's coming. He showed me that truth is being buried under noise, that good is being called evil, and evil called good, that the hearts of people are growing colder, even as technology grows more powerful. And he also showed me this. There is still time. Not much, but enough. Enough to turn back, enough to speak up, enough to repent, to forgive, to stop numbing ourselves with entertainment and politics and fake outrage. Enough to fall on our knees, not in weakness, but in surrender. Because what's coming will shake every system we've built. Only one thing will stand: truth. And truth has a name: Jesus. Not religion, not tradition, not nationalism. Him. You may not believe my story. You may think I hit my head too hard. You may scroll past this like it's just another strange video in a world full of noise. But before you do, ask yourself, why does this make you uncomfortable? Why are you still listening? Why does part of you believe me? Because your soul remembers what your mind forgot. Because you were made for more than this world. Because deep down, you know, something is coming. And we're all going to have to choose. Not red or blue, not left or right, light or darkness. So I'm asking you, wake up before it's too late. Richard, if this touched you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Comment below. Tell me, have you ever felt something pulling at your soul? Have you ever asked God to reveal the truth? Do you believe we're in a spiritual war right now? Let's talk about it. You're not alone. None of us are. He's still waiting, just like he waited for me. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This message isn't for one person. It's for a generation, and someone you know might be one click away from waking up. Let's shake the silence together.